Easy guys, welcome to Showtime, a YouTube channel and podcast celebrating the music, art and culture of Chesterfield, Derbyshire and the Peak District. Today, David McPhie talks to Chesterfield folk sensation Hannah James. Just a quick reminder guys, can you just smash that like and subscribe button and enjoy the show. Roll the credits, it's Showtime.
Right, it's my great pleasure this morning to be talking to Chesterfield's own Hannah James, possibly now the country's most versatile and prolific folk singer and instrumentalist. The various incarnations include Kerfuffle with Sam Sweeney, Jig Doll, Lady Masery, her solo appearances with her accordion, and recent collaborations with cellist Toby Kuhn, and of course your innovative clog dancing routines. Hannah, I know that your parents have been involved with folk music in the area for many years and are now immensely proud of your achievements. Tell us about your early introduction via them to the folk world and how you progressed locally as a musician in Chesterfield prior to spreading your wings onto the international stage.
Well, my mum and dad, when I was really little, my mum and dad were involved in kind of an Appalachian dance team called McPHIE'S. They started it, and so they used to perform at a lot of folk festivals around the country, and they also ran a festival in Matlock as well, McPHIE'S Festival. So I was kind of just around this stuff from when I was really little, and there were always having rehearsals in the house, the band were always around playing. So to me, it was just really normal for there to just be music all around, all the time. And I started when I was 3. I went to dancing school. My mum never tried to kind of push what she did on me, but I wanted to go to dancing school when I was 3. So I started at Diane Bradbury's dance school in Chesterfield, and yeah, the thing that I took to the most was tap dancing, which makes sense because I was around percussive dancing from when I was, before I was even born. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think my daughter went to that dance school as well in Chesterfield.
Oh, really?
Actually. How old are you, Hannah?
33.
Oh, no, my daughter's 48, so
Okay.
it would have been a long time between that. Who have been your primary musical influences since that day?
Well, I've had a lot. I started to play the accordion because I joined this group for young musicians and clog dancers based in Stockport called the Fosbrooks. And the woman who runs that is called Liza Austin Strange, and she was the first person to ever put an accordion in my hands. So I guess she's a pretty huge influence. And then not long after I started to play, I started to have lessons with a really amazing accordion player called Karen Tweed, who is a London Irish accordion player, but really innovative, plays a lot of different styles, types of music. So I think her way of approaching music and just playing around with it and being really creative and learning lots of different types of music, working with different people, I think was a big influence on me. And then a few years later, I went on an exchange to the Sibelius Academy in Helsinki, and I had lessons with another amazing accordion player called Maria Kalanimi, who, she also had a big influence on me. She's this very kind of powerful player, and she plays button accordion, so it's a bit different to what I play. So I think, especially with playing, I think those two have probably had, I'd say the biggest influence on my approach and everything.
Musicians, what musicians, singers influenced you in the first place?
Well, I had lots and lots and lots, but I had when I went to Newcastle Uni briefly to have to start the folk degree, I had lessons with an amazing singer called Chris Coe. And she really gave me, because I'd always sung, but I'd never really had that much training. And she really kind of revolutionized the way that I sang and used my voice and breathe even. She kind of went really back to kind of basic foundation stuff. So I, had lessons with her for a while. And then also when I was in Helsinki, I had a vocal tutor as well, who was also a huge influence. She's called Sirka Kosonen, and she's a much more experimental singer who does a lot of crossover with jazz. And she's also very into kind of different kind of, I guess, ethno vocal techniques. So she's, she taught me the technique for yodeling. And there's also, there's a kind of singing called cow calling, which you get in sort of Sweden, Norway, and a bit in Finland as well. And she taught me that. And then from then, I think the number one thing that has influenced my music and everything is going to these kind of international music gatherings called ethno music camps that I've been going to for years. I went to my first one when I was 15 in Sweden. And I've met so many different people and picked up techniques and tunes and songs and vocal styles and loads of things that I can't really pinpoint it to one person, but that whole movement and that approach to playing and meeting people and stuff is like number one thing that's influenced me. Yeah.
You've stolen my next question, which was going to be, what musical influences did you learn from going to the Sibelius Music Academy? So
okay, yeah. Well, I mean, when I went there, I'd been playing sort of traditional music and I've been playing in a band, and then I went to Newcastle University for a year and started the folk degree there, and then I went on to this exchange in Sibelius Academy, and their approach to teaching is streets ahead of what we have here for a start, but also their kind of approach to folk music and the way that you can bend it and stretch it however you want is really cool, because they kind of see it like there's two paths that you can take when you're playing kind of folk music and traditional music. You can either go down the real hardcore kind of study of old recordings and old manuscripts and trying to work out exactly what the old players were doing. And if you really want to call yourself a traditional musician, you need to do that. But then they also acknowledge that there's this complete like other strand that you can do where you can just take it exactly where you want and do whatever you like with it, because it's living and it can take that. And that was I felt like that at the time, it was a very, very different attitude to what they had in Newcastle, for instance. And it just gave a lot more space for kind of exploring your own artistic, your own creativity and your own voice as an artist, as well as studying this kind of old ways of playing and singing and types of tunes.
You mentioned tap dancing. You went to tap dancing school. Did you ever come across the African American strand of tap? I'm very interested in jazz, modern jazz, and old 20s, 30s jazz.
Yeah.
And connected to the 20s, 30s, particularly the 30s, there's a guy called Jack Cole and another one called Bill Robinson, who was known as Mr. Bojangles.
I've heard of Robinson,
tap. Have you come across that?
Yeah, and then later there was this amazing duo called the Nicholas Brothers. Have you come across them?
Yes, I've seen those, yes.
Yeah. They're like real heroes. I think they're amazing.
They appeared, not necessarily as themselves, but in the Cotton Club. Have you ever seen the Cotton Club film?
No.
It's set in Harlem in the Cotton Club. with Duke Ellington music in the background all the time. And they are woven into the story, the brothers.
Okay.
So it's interesting. Have a look at that film.
There's also one. There's a really, really famous dance routine that those two did in a film called Stormy Weather, and that's like, it's really easy to find. It's like the first thing that comes up when you search them on YouTube, and it's just an amazing routine. But apparently, that was also the first film to have an all-black cast, so it's also quite groundbreaking film in a lot of ways.
Right, next question. My listening history is rooted in blues and jazz, but I can also listen, and I'm interested in anything minor key. And listening to some of your Lady Masery recordings, in particular one I listened to last night, Nottingham Fair, a live recording of Nottingham Fair, with the sitar-like instrument. What is that called, incidentally?
It's actually a kind of new made hybrid instrument. So Rowan's dad is an instrument maker, and he makes banjos and violins, very good violins. But he sometimes goes a bit wacky and decides to do something else. So he made this thing called a band sitar, and it's basically like it's a banjo, but I think they call them mountain banjos. So they've got, rather than a skin, they've got a wooden front. But then the bit that makes it sound like it does is that it's got a hard bone bridge that doesn't have notches in it for the strings to sit in, so they resonate on top, and it really sounds sitar-y. But it's
I think, did you use it when you played at Wirksworth? You played Wirksworth last year, didn't you, I think? Did you use it there? Because I can remember somebody explaining the origin of the instrument.
Yeah. I'm sure we did. We use it on a couple of songs. So
But in listening to that song, my thoughts were there's a dark side to it. There's a dark side to English folk, obviously, isn't there? The dark heart of English folk, and the connection that has to blues. Really, it's sort of an English form of the blues in a way, isn't it? That strand of folk.
Yeah, I think so, and it's got its own, it's got its own sort of modal landscape and stuff, and it's also, it's often those old traditional folk songs are songs that have come through lots of hands of regular working class people, so they're about kind of normal life and normal struggles and things, which is, I guess, very similar to
the American Negro situation. I mean, you get that quite a lot with a few recorded examples of Anne Briggs music, don't you, as well?
Yeah, she's great.
And what she did with Bert Jansch. Last year I went to 3 festivals, coincidentally 3 folk festivals, because folk's not really been until Fairport Convention, and then I started going backwards from Fairport. Until then, I didn't really get interested in English folk. But last year, I thought I'd go to 3 festivals. I went to Uttoxeter, the New Forest Folk Festival, and Sidmouth. And the 3 highlights for me were Peter Knight's Gig Spanner Big Band, the Edgelarks, and yourself at Sidmouth.
Oh, thanks.
Actually. And those were my 3 standout things from the year. Unfortunately, the next ones that I was going to was the Whitley Bay Jazz Festival, and that's now been cancelled. Have a lot of things, of course, now, haven't they?
Yeah.
What do you who do you think on the scene at the moment are the most innovative musicians taking folk to a new stage? I mean, you are yourself, obviously. Who else would you pinpoint that's doing that?
In the UK, I think there's a lot of very innovative stuff going on in Scotland at the moment. I think they've been a bit ahead of the game with sort of, allowing folk to cross over with other types of music for longer than we have in the UK, in England, sorry. So, people like Martin Green is doing really, really innovative stuff. and his partner Inga Thompson. They're both amazing. I suppose it depends what you mean as well. I think folk music is kind of like expanding out in lots of directions. Like there's people bringing in like much more political elements and really pushing it in that direction. There's people, trying to expand the dance side of it. There's people, kind of combining it with different genres of music. So yeah, there is really a lot going on. You kind of sometimes have to look below the surface for it, because I don't know, still the stuff that I don't know, wins awards and gets in the new folk charts is often not exactly what I would pick. But yeah.
Yeah, I think another thing attractive to me about folk is the fact that it does and always has utilised place names in England. You get the names of towns, whereas rock music has not adopted that. And to me, that's very strange. I think the Animals in Newcastle, when they started, they did a few songs, mentioned the area, the northeast, but very few other rock bands have taken that up and actually done that, which to me, I think would have been a way forward. But anyway, one of your recent collaborations that I'm particularly drawn to is your collaboration with Toby Kuhn, the cello player. And again, that's because I think the cello is an instrument that portrays darkness very well in both its classical strand and in more popular forms of music as well. Are you going to do more music with him?
Yeah, we'd almost finished recording an album just before lockdown happened, but we needed about 3 more tracks on it. And we actually just got together a few weeks ago before I came back here to do those extra few tracks. So yeah, the album will probably be out in the spring, I imagine. Although it's everything's a bit up in the air at the moment with Corona and things. But it'll be out next year for definite. And we're hopefully, because Toby also is in Slovenia quite a lot, so we're hoping to do a little kind of European tour at some point next year. Travel restrictions permitting. And I hope we'll come back over here as well. Obviously it's going to be more tricky now with Brexit and stuff for people to come over from Europe who aren't citizens. But I think we found a way of making it work now. So
I was trawling through some of your music last night, and I came across one, and I looked for it again this morning and couldn't find it. It was with an fairly large group of...
Ethno in Transit.
That's right, Ethno in Transit, and I thought that was excellent.
Was it the gig from Villiandy Folk Festival?
It might have been. I can't remember which specific one it was, but I listened to that and thought that was great.
Yeah, that was a very formative time, I think, for me when I was kind of touring with them and guesting as their dancer and stuff. And actually, I'm still really good friends with a lot of those musicians. 2 of them ended up in the Jigdoll Ensemble, the first version of the Jigdoll Ensemble, and one of them I kind of live with now in Slovenia. Right. So they're my crew.
Right.
Yeah.
Question: have you come across, talking about Eastern European and ethnic music, have you come across Eva Bitova?
No.
There's something for you to listen to.
Okay.
I play it to all my friends, and there's only one of them I've come across who likes her. She's a performance artist. Actually, she's done some films, but she's extremely off the wall. And has played with jazz musicians, with classical, with everyone. That's have a listen, and I'd be interested to know. I would imagine that you would possibly get it, whereas a lot of my friends don't.
And where's she from?
Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's probably...
I don't know.
She's probably in her 60s now, but
I
don't think she's ever toured this country, which is a great shame. I mean, she'd be great on Jules Holland, for instance. Anyway, diversion, sorry. Are you likely to, I mean, given this virus situation, which obviously is curtailing live music everywhere, when it's finished, are you likely to perform in Derbyshire again with any of
Yeah,
the?
I'd hope so.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be doing a Christmas tour in December. It was supposed to be a 12-date tour, and now it's down to 6 dates that haven't been postponed to next year, that are going to run with sort of social distancing in place and things. So we'll just wait and see like whether that is actually going to happen or not. If it does, I think the closest will be is Sheffield.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to get your dad to start the Whitworth concerts again.
Yeah.
They were very good. I saw 2 or 3 of those, and very impressive.
Mm.
Yeah. If, for instance, you have been of the right age when Thorpe Oak Convention and Steel Eye Span, I sort of Richard Thompson, electrified folk music, what would your attitude have been to that, do you think? Would you have been purist and said, this is not on? Or would you have said, great, this is moving it forward?
I think it depends when you'd asked me, actually. I think I probably, when I first got into folk music, I was so into the details and the trad stuff that I might have been a bit more closed to it.
Yeah.
These days, you know, my approach to music has sort of opened out a lot. So, yeah, I think these days I'd be well into it. Yeah.
In a way, it was a bit like the Bob Dylan thing when he came to this country, wasn't it? And he was really crucified for electrifying the American folk music, wasn't
Right.
it? More or less the equivalent of that. How has being a dancer influenced your actual music?
Loads. I mean, I always start with kind of the rhythm of something, whether I'm writing a song or composing a tune or thinking about a piece of performance. So the kind of percussive side of the dance is really the center of how I think musically. So actually that grounding as a dancer that I had from when I was really young is kind of, it's integral to everything. And actually the reason why I made my first solo show, Jigdoll, was to really show that the very symbiotic relationship that dance and music have, especially in folk, and try to make a show where the lines between what is being a musician, what is being a dancer are not clear. So yeah, a lot. Yeah.
You started traditional. How has your repertoire progressed since that? We've mentioned some of your incarnations. But,
Yeah, well, I started to write songs about 5 or 6 years ago. I did well, the first verse of a song that I ever wrote was actually for a project called the Elizabethan Sessions that I was part of a few years ago. It was a collaboration organised by the English Folk Dance and Song Society and Folk by the Oak Festival. And that was kind of a songwriting collaboration, but I was in it as one of the musicians. But kind of, wanted to have a go at writing songs. So I wrote one verse of the song. And then when I made my solo show, Jigdoll, that was going to be, at the beginning, it was just going to be movement and music, but without any words at all. But at the time I was making it, I was on tour with Maddie Pryor and Giles Lewin. And I was trying out a few of the pieces as my solo bit in the show. And after a few nights, Maddie came over with a glass of wine in her hand after the gig, and she said, yeah, it's all very good, but you need words. You need words, and you need to start writing songs. And I was like, I don't write songs, it's not what I do. She was like, no, you need to start writing songs. You can write songs. So she then, there's this, because she runs courses up at her farm in the Lake District, and in Cumbria, not Lake District, and she runs things like poetry courses as well. And we were going to York the next day, and she has a friend, Ian Dewig, who's one of the people who goes and teaches poetry courses there, and he lives in Leeds. And she called him and paid for him to stay in the hotel in York with us and have breakfast with me the next day and talk to me about songwriting. So we did that, and from that I kind of started to write songs, and then it really there were a couple of bits of old text that I'd kind of changed and set to music on my first solo album, but then I really started to write songs more kind of after that. And the next album, which is the one with the ensemble that you saw in Sidmouth, is a full album of my own songs. So yeah, I guess it's weird because now when I'm in, especially when I'm in Slovenia, and the people, the new musicians that I'm working with now, they refer to me as a singer-songwriter sometimes, and I'm like, what? Because that's never what I saw myself as, or it's not kind of what I came from. But I suppose, yeah, that is one side of what I do now, and I think through that it's interesting because I think when you play folk music, you can almost get a little bit locked in to feeling like you have to do this traditional music, because if a song has survived for hundreds of years and loads of people have sung it and tweaked it, and it's not by any one person anymore, it's by a community of people, then it must be all right, and you don't have any of that when you're presenting your own song that you've written yourself. You don't have any of that trust to kind of fall back on that it's a good song because people have sung it before. But when you do it, it's very kind of exposing. But when people connect with something that you've written from your own experience, it's just a completely different kind of connection with the audience and an experience for you as a musician. So yeah, it's become a really important part of what I do now. Yeah,
I think writing songs is essential for a musician's legacy in the years to come, isn't it? If you're remembered as someone who wrote songs,
yeah,
rather than someone who's an interpreter of songs.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, and composer as well. I suppose, yeah, whether you're writing songs or instrumental music, I think if you're creating it, then that's more likely to be remembered as, someone who was good at performing other people's stuff, whether you were a violinist or a singer, whatever. Yeah.
It's a big string to one's bow, isn't it?
In
putting it. One song of yours that I've heard, The Three Ravens, there was an attachment on the YouTube video, I think, that's saying that you found it in Stony Middleton.
Yeah, I didn't, but it was collected there. There was a folk song collector called Frank Kidson, and he collected around that area. And it came from a woman called Mrs. Holmes in Stony Middleton. And I actually heard that song for the first time being sung by a Swedish singer in a band called Swap, who actually Karen Tweed was also playing in. It kind of did a big journey, kind of away from Derbyshire and then back to me. And I've taken it to some quite different places as well. We did a version of that song with this collaboration I did in India a few years ago. There's actually a really nice version of it on YouTube as well. I'm singing it, but then halfway through, this amazing sarangi player and singer called Suhail Yusuf Khan does an amazing vocal solo in the middle of it. So it's travelled with me a lot, that song.
Listening to it as well, thinking that how close Stony Middleton is to Eyam, it brings to mind the play, because it's a very dark song, isn't it? That was a thought that came to me while I was listening to it. Talking about the virus, how are you dealing with it?
Well, I got stuck in Slovenia. So my year so far was I went there in January. Well, in the end of December, I decided I was going to spend a couple of months there to see if I actually want to live there, because I kind of had this idea that I did. And then I was supposed to leave at the beginning of March and start touring. I had some stuff in Canada and then some stuff back here and a gig in Algeria. There was supposed to be loads going on this year. And then it all just, like dominoed away. And it was, I ended up the airport closed, and I got stuck, kind of locked down in a house with 6 other musicians and artists in Slovenia. So I ended up actually, I put one person actually got in touch with me and said, would you be up for giving me an online singing lesson? And I'd never done that before, but I thought, yeah, sure, why not? So we tried it, and it actually worked okay. So then I kind of put a few messages out on social media and said, I'm going to run some lessons while this is all happening. And that has actually sustained me through the whole Corona period so far. I've been lucky because I was not in the UK. There have been a few gigs. I did one in Austria. It's a festival called Verkehr Festival, and then a couple in Slovenia as well. But yeah, it's mostly been this weird new online teaching world that's kept me going. Yeah.
So what projects and new ideas do you have in the pipeline at the moment?
So I'm well, the things that I'm sort of carrying forward now are Lady Masery, the Jig Doll Ensemble, and the duo with Toby, which is quite a lot already. But a couple of years ago, I did a project. It was through the Museum of English Rural Life, which is part of Reading University, and they commissioned me to make a piece about clog making. And they kind of paired me up with one of the last traditional clog makers in the country, who's based in Wales, near Cardiff. And yeah, he made me a pair of clogs, and we kind of filmed the whole process and filmed me talking to him. And then I made this piece, which is a bit similar to the style that I'd used for Jig Doll, with kind of movement and music, but also had spoken word in it as well. And yeah, it was kind of about how we carry forward things like skills and crafts that can't be kept in a museum because they're not physical things. But I'm moving to Slovenia and buying this house out in the countryside. My next door neighbour is actually a shoemaker, and he makes really amazing leather shoes. So I've got this. My next thing that I'd like to do, I'd like to make a sort of parallel piece where I get him to make me a pair of shoes for step dancing, and interview him about his life and the work that he does, and then a bit about the place, and kind of make those two pieces into sort of a whole evening that are woven together with other ideas about community and land and connection and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I think you just answered what was going to be my last question, which was, you spent a lot of time in Eastern Europe, obviously, recently. Do you intend to settle there? And you've just said that.
Yeah. Yeah, so far, yeah, it's kind of been drawing me for years, and I finally tried it out this year, and then kind of ended up getting sucked in a lot quicker than I expected to because of Corona and stuff. But in a way, it was a blessing because it made me find a way to earn a living from there straight away, and it kind of fast forwarded a lot of the processes that I would have gone through otherwise. So yeah, so that's,
it will have obviously a good cross-cultural influence on your music as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much for that, Hannah. That was very interesting, and this will go out on Aaron Brown's podcast sometime in the future, because what we're trying to do is document Chesterfield's history. Obviously music being a big part of that.
Yeah.
So I think Chesterfield, which is already the folk brand, already very proud of you, I think a greater slice of Chesterfield's population will get to hear of you. And I think obviously buy your music. So
great.
Thanks very much, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Fantastic, guys. I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. We'll put links for all Hannah's socials and how to get in touch with her in the description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and here's to many more.